things off by a quick introduction for everyone. Maybe we could say our connection to PPS, our name, our pronouns, and anything else you want to share about your background or connection to climate work. So I can get started. I'm Alyssa Kumis, she, her. I have two young elementary school kiddos at PPS at Sunnyside Environmental School, our neighborhood school, and I have a background in public health. Maybe we can do this popcorn style, so I'll just call on the next person who's on my list. I've got Leah.
Hello, I'm Leah, she, her pronouns. I have one fourth grader at Stevenson and a seventh grader at Jackson. I am family medicine faculty at OHSU, but I'm soon to be moving over to Virginia Garcia, and I'm excited about that. And I also have a public health background. And I trained in Alaska for my residency, and one of the native villages that was flagged for relocation has been officially relocated. It just took 15 years, Newtok. So that's where I started with climate change, was training in Alaska and seeing the effects in the subarctic and Arctic pretty quickly, long time ago, and recognizing the connection with health. And I'm really excited to be on this committee with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Leah. Maybe we'll pass it over to Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon Adams. My daughter graduated from Benson Polytech a couple years ago, and my son is a senior at Benson Polytech, and they both went through Portland Public Schools. My pronouns are she, her. I myself am a high school science teacher. Previous to that, I was in immunology and vaccination development, but I have become far more interested in the environment and the immediate impacts of climate change, especially as being a teacher and having to teach these things, the effect on the students. I am involved with a thought leaders committee that is working on curriculum for climate literacy and climate activism, as well as a few other groups around town that I'm involved with that are how do we teach and prepare our youth without terrifying them, but building resilience and literacy around these very immediate topics. Thank you.
I'm going to go in order on my screen. So Carrie, if you want to jump in next.
Sure. My name is Carrie Jones Bohara. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at PPS. I'm the Climate Justice Student Projects Coordinator. So I'm not technically on the CCRC, but I'm here and will pop in to your meetings to support CAT and update you on the Climate Friendly Public Schools program, which is what I manage, which is all of our student activists who are implementing climate action projects within their schools. My background, I'm an educator. I taught at PPS for about 10 years at the elementary level. And prior to that, my background is in the environmental world, worked for a number of different nonprofits within the Portland community in a variety of roles, from volunteer management to grant writing and all sorts of things. So excited to bring those two things together and really excited to hear from all of you today.
Thanks, Carrie. Kat, I got you next.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Kat Davis. I am the Climate Justice Advisor here at PPS. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been with PPS for about 3 years. My role is to oversee the implementation of our climate crisis response, climate justice, and sustainable practices policy, which we're going to dive into today. It's the most ambitious climate policy for a K-12 district in the US, so it's something we're really proud of, and this committee gets to be really involved in knowing what's going on around the district, advocating for how to see it, continue to progress meaningfully. And yeah, so I'm just excited to see you all. I'll be your staff liaison for this journey. So I'll be here to share all the updates about what's going on with the policy, answer any questions and things like that. Yeah. And then Alyssa, if it's okay, I was going to introduce someone specifically, which is Director Eddie Wang is on the call with us, who is our board liaison. So, Eddie, if you want to, or Director Wang, if you want to jump in and say hi.
Yeah, Eddie Wong, I use he, her, him pronouns. Yeah, I'm the board liaison this year for this committee. Happy to be here. I've been a lifelong educator. I was a science teacher for over 2 decades in physics and biology. I actually was one of the did a lot of actually work in writing and piloting curriculum in both North Clackamas and PPS on incorporating climate units into our education, especially making them more culturally responsive. So that I'm actually so climate justice and climate in general has been um, something of a passion of mine since I was a little kid. Speaking of little kid, I have a seventh grader in PPS as well. So very invested. So thank you. I'm glad to be here. And I might be, just so you know, I might be popping in and out. My kid's at home, so I need to start dinner at some point before she kills me. Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Eddie. I really appreciate that, and having you as our liaison means so much. So thanks for joining, and we understand the multitasking that goes on.
Yeah. Thank you.
um,
You're welcome. Thank you.
yeah. How about Alma?
Hey, my name is Alma. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a junior at Cleveland High School, so I'm one of the student representatives this year. I was also the student representative last year. I've been on the CJYA, the Climate Justice Youth Advisory, and then I'm co-president of the Climate Club at Cleveland High School, which is one of those projects groups that Carrie was talking about. And yeah, so very passionate about climate work. Um, and my job is just to make sure you guys are all informed about what students want. And so that we're keeping everything focused on students because this is a school district.
Absolutely. So grateful to have you, Alma. Leah A, you want to share with us?
Yes. Hi, my name is Leah. I'm also a student representative. I'm a senior from Lincoln High School. And my experience, I was recently appointed to the Portland Sustainability and Climate Commission, which is a newly formed commission this year. Really wonderful opportunity, and I'm so glad to be part of that group. And then I'm also co-president of my environmental justice club at school. I've gotten the chance to work with some of the money from PSEF, which has been really great for our school. And then outside of that, I'm really passionate about climate policy in specific and making it accessible to youth and opening it as a method of activism for youth. So me and a friend have been trying to get this project going where we connect legislators and policymakers with students to get them to talk and connect and see climate policymaking as a viable job option. And so yeah, I'm really excited to be here and meet all of you. And I hope this is a great and productive year.
Me too, Leah. Thank you. So grateful to have our student representatives. Like, so lucky. Thank you. Barbie. Are you there, Barbie? Maybe I'll skip to Murtaza and then we'll come back to you, Barbie.
Hi everyone, I'm Murtaza Batla. I use he, him pronouns. Sorry, I just got my camera to start working, so I haven't just been lurking in the background. I am a physician, internal medicine, sports medicine. I have 2 kids in the PPS system, one in middle school at Jackson and one in elementary at Markham. I don't personally have any climate justice uh, professional experience, but I am an immigrant from Pakistan, so unfortunately, we have seen, especially over the recent years, quite a bit of first line impact of the effects of climate change. And Along with that, I have personally volunteered with climate-related disaster recovery effects, especially in a couple of small towns I've lived in. Um, so bringing that experience with me as well. But yeah, happy to be part of this committee and help out however I can.
Thanks so much. America?
Hello, my name's America. I use she, her pronouns. I have one kid at PPS and another kid at Helen Gordon. I currently work for the utility company, so talking about climate change is going to be pretty awesome because I think that it's going to be two completely different point of views. I'm wrapping up my MBA at Portland State University. And so I can help out. I have a very strong background in government and doing all of those intricacies. I'm also very good at like technical stuff, so finance, anything, any numbers that we're going to need to make our point. I can definitely help out with the storytelling for that. And I'm just pretty excited to know that I'm going to be getting all of this data from like two different viewpoints, and it's going to be pretty awesome to like try to collaborate with you guys and make it all happen. I agree. I was taking a look at the paperwork that the plan that we have is very ambitious, and I'm glad that it was approved and put together, and it's pretty awesome to be a part of that. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Jane.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Como. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm so excited to hear about everybody's collective experience and everything that folks are bringing to this group. This is my 4th year serving on the committee, so I was part of the inaugural Climate Crisis Response Committee members. And I also was a community advocate who worked with a team of folks from across sectors, including PPS staff and the PPS school board. Lots of students were involved and community-based organizations to develop and get like shepherd the policy through the whole process. So I have that kind of like historical knowledge, I guess, that I can hope to bring to the group to the extent that it's helpful. And then professionally, I have a background in sustainability generally. These days, my day job is in like the circular economy and trying to reduce the amount of stuff that we consume and thinking about like embodied carbon in materials, but also like the nuts and bolts of the garbage and recycling system. I'm a policy person also. That's kind of my specialty in local government. So yeah, I'm really excited. This seems like a great group, and thanks for chairing us this year, Alyssa.
Happy to walk in big footsteps in front of me. And so last but not least is Barbie, our previous chair. If your connection is working, I wonder if you're having trouble, Barbie.
Hey, hopefully you can hear me. Barbie Alexander, I'm going to talk really fast because it's kicked me out about 19.
Well, if we had you and now we've lost you, maybe, Barbie.
Interstate I-5, Oregon to Washington Bridge Replacement Program. My connection to this group, I've served on the panel for 4 years now. I am last year's previous chair. I'm so excited for Alyssa. Like, you have no idea. It's like electric what she is going to bring. I'm just pumped and excited to still be connected and serving. I have a long history in environmental science, although that's not what I do, but I do integrate it into all of my work programs. And I have a 9th grader at McDaniel. So I'm here to serve, support, and be your biggest fans and cheerleaders. And if I can contribute or share information, please think of me
Thanks, Barbie. We got like, I think like 98% of that.
Um, oh, yes, and then everyone froze, so I stayed really still.
Oh
I
no.
was like, okay.
No, that's great. Um, oh yeah, and Jane, two PPS students. Awesome. Um, it's just so wonderful to have everyone here and like what a wealth of experience and perspectives and just like backgrounds we have in this group. It's really fantastic. And I'll just say I'm grateful for all the work that Kat did to get us to this point in time where we're all together. Just the logistics that went into it, I know are Herculean. So thank you, Kat. um, and I think we have really a great agenda for this evening's meeting, and it's really just to get everybody like introduced to the policy and to make sure we all understand what the committee's role is. And the one thing I'll say before turning it over to Kat is that I know from being new last year, just if there's any acronym you don't understand, if there's anything that you need clarification on, please feel free to like speak up, put it in the chat, or just speak up, because I'm sure that most other folks will have the same question. So yeah, excited to have everybody engaged. Maybe I'll pass it over to you, Kat.
Sounds great. Yes, I'm excited to get to review this with everyone. So for this part of reviewing the policy, I'll be sharing. Well, so I wanted to just make sure everyone had an understanding of what our overall policy goals are. I shared our policy PDF, the full thing in the agenda, like in the meeting materials, which are on our website. So definitely take a deeper dive at that. I also wanted to mention that a couple things as I preface all of this. One is that our website just transitioned to a new platform. So there's a couple links that are still being mended. And so I am going to be working on that over the next 2 days to make sure everything's up to date and working. So after that, I'll make sure all the links to, typically you can just Google like PPS Climate Crisis Response Committee if you need like a quick access to finding this page, and the link that pops up on there isn't working currently. So I just wanted to make sure you all, in case you were trying to find things, know that that transition just happened. So we're currently updating it. Very exciting. I also wanted to let you all know, leading up to this, that we also have a YouTube page, which is where these committee meetings are streamed. Right now, you all are live on YouTube, so exciting. And also where you can reference back to if you're ever wanting to find meeting. The links will be on our website as well as on the YouTube channel, so you can go subscribe to that if you want. And the final thing I wanted to mention is that at the end of last school year, we presented a really exciting dashboard that PPS had worked on to show progress towards our policy goals. Due to budget cuts, that dashboard is no longer available. And so we are actively rebuilding what we had there into a new platform that will be totally owned and operated by PPS. So I just wanted to let you all know we'll be talking about the committee recommendations from last year and some highlights from those recommendations. And so you'll be hearing about that dashboard during that time. And it was great. I have pictures, but alas, we had to take away that Invisio contract. And so now we're just going to totally own and operate the whole thing. So that'll be great, though, to get to own it and really make it our own. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. I kindly request that if you have questions, thoughts, comments, everything, just please unmute and speak up. Or if you see something in the chat, please speak up, because while I'm sharing my screen, it's hard to see those notifications on the chat. So this doesn't have to just be a slide deck where we go through things. It can definitely be more of a conversation. So please let me know if you see things you want to dive more deeply into. So you all should be seeing, okay, yes, a slide deck right now. Excellent. Look at this. Few technology goofs. Love it. Okay, so welcome to our Climate Crisis Response Committee orientation. Really excited to have you all today. Today we didn't have any public comment. That's typically something that's available to the public. Since it's an orientation, it just wasn't something I offered, but it will be available at all the future quarterly meetings. Just so that you're aware. We already went over the agenda. So to key up talking about what this policy is, it's really important we talk about the history of the policy. With Jane in particular here, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of these dates. But so one of the things, this is something I like to bring it back to. We've heard about community involvement and students here at this meeting, and that's all very intentional because this policy was brought to the PPS board in, I believe, the fall of 2019, where the community partners, of amazing community advocates actually came with like a draft of a policy to say this is something we want to see PPS adopt. The climate crisis is real, it's happening, and we need to do something about it. This is following a resolution that PPS passed for climate literacy a couple years prior that they just hadn't seen the kind of movement that they wanted, that they being the community, teachers, parents, even staff wanted to see. And so having a board policy has more teeth and more accountability to it. And so they're like, we want to see this like really take place. So something that's really special about this policy is that it's the result of student teacher community leadership and advocacy, and also the final policy that we got, which passed in March of 2022, was the result of, think about this, right? 2020 to 2022, during the pandemic, negotiations virtually between, PPS board members, along with staff and teachers and students and community, all working together to craft this really great piece of policy that is now being referenced across the country as like the gold standard of what people should be working towards, which is really exciting. I get asked about it a lot. I include that my role was hired for in June of 2022, shortly after the policy passed, recognizing that we needed to have a point person to manage all of these scopes of work. So while I don't necessarily, I oversee the implementation of some specific things where I'm actually implementing them, but a lot of work also just lives across dozens of departments at PPS, both centrally, and then every school site is involved as well. So it really takes everyone working together. And then we've started doing annual climate crisis response policy. CCRP is what we shorten everything to, because the policy itself is a kind of long acronym. So we call it the CCRP report in 2023. And my goal is to do another like comprehensive report this year. So that was a little bit about the history. There was a lot of student activism and movement around climate change and climate justice at that time. And within this, I just wanted to make sure that I include the policy language of the commitment that is included in the policy, recognizing that this commitment is for the district to respond to a human-caused climate crisis, and that we're committing to immediately mobilizing resources for climate action. It makes a commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and minimize other negative environmental impacts, improve school communities' health and wellness, build a culture of learning, responsibility, and sustainability centered on racial equity and climate justice. I'm not somebody who typically just reads from a screen, but I do want to really honor the language that was drafted in this context. And so I think that those pieces are really important, and they really guide how we look at decisions with this policy in mind. And within this too, the other thing I'll mention is that the way that PPS effectively defines climate justice in this policy is recognizing that climate change disproportionately impacts the most vulnerable members of our community, and that when we're implementing this policy goals, we will prioritize serving people with disabilities, communities of color, and other vulnerable populations. So just making sure we're all grounded in that. And then the other really important part of this commitment is that through this work, our goal is to educate and empower students as leaders in a just transition to a sustainable and restorative society. So that includes climate literacy, it includes providing opportunities for civic action. And with that in mind, when this charter was drafted, the intention was to have 9 members with 2 student representatives, making sure that student representatives were active part of this committee structure. That have equal voice and weight and responsibility in this work. What this policy consists of is 2 overarching goals. So there includes a big goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2040 as one big ambitious goal. And then another goal is just overall elevating engagement, resilience, and wellness. I want to mention that with the greenhouse gas emissions goals and the net zero goals, there was in the one of the drafts that made it near to the end of the policy agreement was actually having the emissions being net zero by 2050. And through like community advocacy and student advocacy, they pushed it up to 2040. So just again, really showing that commitment to the community and pursuing really ambitious goals. There's 3 pillars within the policy, which we'll go over: environmental impacts and costs, improving health and wellness, and providing environmental and sustainability education. And it includes a community board oversight committee. So that's you all, members of the community that come together to report to the board on how well PPS is doing upholding these board commitments. So that's just the history. Now I'm going to go through some of the actual, each of the different pillars of the policy at a really high level. So I just wanted to pause for a moment in case anyone has any questions. Yeah, Shannon.
Yes, I'm just looking at my notes and I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but I'm hoping House Bill 3365 will be considered in some of this and moving forward. I just wanted to throw that card on the table, maybe for further discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so 3365 is the climate literacy bill. Is that correct?
Yes, one of the groups I mentioned that I'm involved with, some of the people I am in that group with were ones behind getting that going. So we've been discussing it for a while, and I was just recently in a professional development about it. So I'm just, with some of the things you're mentioning, education with students and the climate literacy, now that it's a House bill in Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
That's a great point. And I don't think it's jumping the gun at all. So that actually reminds me of what I was going to mention earlier, which is that the goal of this meeting is to provide like a high level overview of the policy. And while I'm doing that, keep in mind things that you want to see like a deeper dive of or are curious about or want to have further discussions on. At the next committee meeting, which is the first quarterly meeting, my intention is to bring in staff that manage different scopes of work related to the policy. So you can actually hear how we're making progress on different scopes directly from the staff that manage them if they're available. So at that point, we'll be able to talk about like progress points. And then in addition to the quarterly meetings, thinking about doing some kind of like deeper discussion meetings, if that's something that's of interest to folks, to talk about like climate literacy specifically, like what are the different bills that are happening? How does it interact with like our other district goals around academics and literacy? As well as, our decarbonization efforts, where are those at? Those are some like kind of uh, juicier topics that could like use a full period of time. So that's a really great point to bring up is the House bill and all of the work that led up to it. And it's very exciting that that passed. So that's yeah, anyways, thank you for mentioning that. And as we like get into the rhythm of the meetings and how we want to structure meetings later today, then we can keep in mind topics like that to do some deeper dives on. Yeah, Murtaza.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there any official definition of what is being referred to as net zero? And is that the ceiling for our goal, or can that be pushed on even more?
That's a really good question. I will have to look at it. I believe net zero in this case is talking about building operations, and so scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, I believe. So it's like doesn't take into consideration like we don't account for all of the staff's commuting to and from work or like the emissions produced by, I believe, our supply chains that we engage in. But when we're thinking about net zero, we're thinking typically about like building operations and having buildings that are producing more energy than they are um, using or carbon-free electricity. Um, Sorry, I'm stumbling on all the words here, but so I'll have to look and see the specific definition, but it's always something that we can revisit and define further. And I would say that the ceiling is, yeah, I think that with technology updates and what we're seeing with innovative construction and design, assuming that there's funding for it, I think that the goal is to make our buildings as climate resilient and sustainable and affordable as possible. So meeting all of those goals, but I think that's all very possible. So I don't think that was a very direct answer. The probably short answer is I'll have to look it up and share it, and then things can be revisited. And yeah, I think the goals are overall ambitious and can always be like expanded depending on what the committee, yeah, is thinking.
No, that was helpful. Thank you.
All right. Great questions. I'm going to start going over each of the kind of pillar goals. And again, just like pop in if you have any other questions. So the first pillar of our policy is to reduce environmental impacts and costs. So this includes things like what we've heard a lot in the discussions with the bonds over the last year about designing low carbon schools or fully electric schools. Something really specific with our policy is that there's a big focus on climate resilience and also taking out any fossil fuel infrastructure in our schools. So we've got our first goal of just constructing low carbon schools and renovating schools to be energy efficient, resilient, and adaptable, and also to maximize our greenhouse gas reduction from operations, maintenance, and facilities management, as well as um, getting more specific into focusing on carbon sequestration from our schoolyards, ensuring that we are trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from our vehicles that are operated or contracted by the district, and then also reducing our demand on the larger waste stream and carbon footprint with reducing our need for more project like raw materials, resources, products, services, and just really focusing on waste reduction. Within
Hey,
this,
Kat.
yeah,
Kat, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I have a burning question in my brain. This is Leah.
yeah.
I I was at a Aspen Ideas climate conference in Chicago this summer, and I'm just wondering if this is even on the table here talking, but part of the net zero plan for Illinois and Michigan is to use micro nuclear grids. And that like freaked me out because I'm a kid of the 80s, and so nuclear power like makes my brain like go like no. But they talked about these tiny cute little cozy nuclear reactors that can be like in people's neighborhoods and powering entire neighborhoods, and that they're very safe, safer than what we imagine. Are we talking about that here at all, or is that not even on the table in terms of our net zero conversation for Portland and Oregon?
So before I came to Portland, I was actually living in Idaho, and that's actually a strategy that different parts of Idaho, especially Idaho Falls uses, is they pair hydro with a small modular nuclear reactor, which is kind of interesting as like a clean energy. I also am trying to wrap my head around it, but I've gone to enough stuff with them that I've like understood it better. I will say that from a PPS perspective, that's not in our wheelhouse, and much too big for us, but I'm not positive about the perspective from the city or county or larger Oregon as like that as a strategy. And we have some folks on here that work with the city and the county, so I'm not sure if you guys have any input on that as a strategy, but I know within our district policy that's out of our wheelhouse. Oh, I've got a couple folks here. Barbie, I saw your hand go up first, and then Leah, I saw yours next.
Mm.
Oh no, Barbie, I think your sound is still cutting out, unfortunately.
I do know that, and if we're talking about like reducing greenhouse gas emissions, considering hydrogen or tapping into programs and looking for fund information.
Hmm.
Again, that's seeking funding for support, etc.
Pardon Harvey, unfortunately, I only heard a couple words of your comment. Would you mind putting some of what you were thinking in the chat and then we can read it out loud? I'm so sorry about that. It sounded brilliant from what I heard, but darn connection. Yeah, Leah, do you want to share?
Yeah, I was wondering about the renovating schools or just adapting them to be more climate resilient or building more green infrastructure. I'm not sure if this is something you can answer, but do you know if that has to be entirely mediated by the district or is that something students can do? I just speaking from experience working on trying to get green infrastructure at schools. We've like faced a lot of pushback, and I know it's something that a lot of students want to see at their schools. Oh wait, I think you're muted.
Thank you. That's a really great question. Yeah, so if any construction is happening on PPS property, it needs to go through the PPS facilities and asset management department. So that's our project managers working on construction contracts and things like that. And as you might have seen and gotten to experience with the student led initiatives, climate friendly public schools funding from the Portland Clean Energy Fund, um, our facilities team is working to create some parameters that make it a little bit more accessible for students to do certain projects on school sites. And as I will say for like the bigger projects, since they do require oftentimes like permits and things like that, and often require a lot of funding, they do need to go through that facilities process. And one of the challenges with our just to provide context, this might be way too much information, but just to provide some like context, just with overall kind of budget and staffing adjustments, our facilities team is pretty like swamped right now with their current scope of maintenance projects and construction projects and things like that. So we're really working together to figure out ways to help um, create processes and streamlines for like if we have, funding from an outside initiative or donor or PTA or these like student project funds that want to do cool projects, but they don't have, capacity to manage them. So that's something we're currently working on. You've definitely, if you say that you've experienced some challenges getting through those processes, you're not alone. It's a really complicated process since there's a lot going on school property that can make it really tricky to do projects. But with our new, with the Office of School Modernization and our modernized buildings, there's a cool opportunity to really like sort of start from scratch and like do bigger overhauls for the buildings that need it, like the high schools. And then once we get through the high schools, we can look at like what that looks like on a smaller scale. And I think there'll be more capacity freed up for some of those projects. And even more so, I'd love to talk with you about like what kinds of projects you're thinking and get some more details from the specific folks in operations because they'll have more kind of information too, because we are always actively installing like updated lighting systems and solar and schoolyards projects, but sometimes we're so busy doing the things we don't always tell people that we're doing them. So I think that's something that also could benefit is to just make sure people are aware of all the projects that we're doing so that we can shed a light on those and then also like encourage them to happen elsewhere. Yeah. Alma, I saw your hand pop up as well.
Yeah, sorry, you actually said most of what I was going to say. I was just going to point out that in terms of students doing more like facilities projects and updating buildings, there is room for that within the PSAF projects, and that's probably the best way to do it because there's funding.
Yes, that's an amazing funding area. And also with the Portland Clean Energy Fund through 2 different grants, we're doing some different school updates as well to help with climate resilience. So that's really exciting. And hopefully I'll have more of an update about that later this year once some of those different processes get more finalized. Great. For the sake of time, I'm going to keep scooting on. And then at our next kind of interval, we can do some more discussion. So in the Pillar 1 goals, that's where you'll see building electrification objectives, where we have a really ambitious goal of no longer installing any fossil fuel equipment infrastructure in buildings after the policy passes. And then for any new buildings that are being designed and constructed after the policy passed, they should not have any fossil fuel infrastructure either, with some very small exceptions, such as like Bunsen burners. Haven't found an alternative yet. Like those like really weird specific school stuff like that. We're still looking for alternatives. And sometimes there's like very minor, like, well, it's not, anyways, we can talk about the exceptions later, but that's the goal with the new buildings moving forward. And the board, well, with the consideration of the cost of schools in the new modernized buildings. The board had a great in-depth discussion about, what to include in our new schools project designs, and building electrification has been maintained as a priority in those projects. So we're really excited to see that consideration, given all of the information we know about the effects of some of this fossil fuel infrastructure locally and globally. So yeah, just wanted to provide that update of that. This is where the school lives. If you hear about that one, that's one of our most active goals. So moving into pillar 2, that's the area that's around improving health and wellness. This is something that I'm passionate about all of it. I think climate resilience is one of those areas that I'm particularly fiery about. And that's really where this area lives. It's really looking at the climate-based impacts on health, safety, wellness of students and employees, and understanding how we can support frontline communities to build resilience from climate change-induced stresses and support preparation and recovery from these events. We know that our students deserve and will thrive in as stable of an environment as we can possibly provide. And we know that our students with the least stable home lives really need school to be a stable place so that they can come and find that sense of stability to thrive. And we know that our students that have food insecurity at home might only find food at school and things like that. Like, we know that schools serve this really special purpose in our community. And so this is like my background in area, and why I get so excited about it is because we're really talking about like, how do we design and construct buildings and also engagement and community spaces such that our students get to come to a place that feels stable despite whatever climate event or climate adjacent event is happening around our area. So I think especially with some of the most recent issues that have caused schools to close around heat and smoke and air quality and cold, this is just one of those things that we can really feel tangibly, comes up regularly, and something that we're actively working on figuring out solutions for. Yep, so that's pillar 2. There's some good objectives within these 2 goals, and they're hefty, but just 2 goals in that one. And then our 3rd pillar includes, is really where we're focusing on that climate literacy and sustainability, place-based learning education. This includes looking at PPS staff as allies for healthy climate and doing their part to ensure that we are moving forward with climate justice in mind, and also ensures that we are being meaningful curricular opportunities that really helps our students understand the causes and consequences of climate change in a way that is robust and systems-led. This is where that House bill that Shannon was mentioning comes into play, where that bill now requires the state of Oregon to develop climate literacy standards for teaching and learning, and PPS, as part of our high quality education model, really focus on, or our instructional, oh my gosh, framework. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. The words are not coming immediately, but the words are there. So anyways, it's all about teaching to the standards, right? And making sure that our students are really on top of like the things that the state of Oregon has said we really need to make sure our students know. And so the state of Oregon committing to developing climate literacy standards for civics and social studies and things like that really create this opportunity for us to lean into looking at those curriculum opportunities. And a lot of different areas are looking at PPS to see how we're doing it. So this is a place where we'll be able to lean in further, and then also be able to share some lessons learned to other communities as we look to develop that. So the last goal under Pillar 3 is really focusing on engagement and empowerment, making sure that our students have real opportunity to practice hands-on climate learning and preparation, and have this opportunity to make a difference in their schools and like learn those skills. With our Portland Clean Energy Funds that we've mentioned, that's like one of the most exciting opportunities that we'll definitely talk more about at the next meeting, that we've had the opportunity to involve all middle school and high school students that are interested and available and actually leading student-led climate projects with real money. So that's been a great initiative to see kicked off last year and moving forward this year. So I am going to take a pause from sharing. I know that that discussion went on a little bit more than our agenda, so I wanted to bring it back to Alyssa to see how you were feeling about timing and everything.
Alyssa, I think you're muted.
So cliche. Thanks, Kat. I want to say grateful to you for walking us through that. I think everybody having a strong foundation in our 3 pillars and understanding the policy is like really critical. It's important for folks to be able to ask questions in real time and make these connections. So I think that's time well spent. Did anybody have any like questions, I guess, that they wanted to ask in general about the policy? Yeah, I feel comfortable with us moving on then, Kat.
Perfect. Sounds good.
I can be more of a break.
Yeah, so next is the committee roles, correct? Is that right? Excellent. Yes, there we go. So I have a few slides for that too, just to show what we what the committee worked on last year to give you some sense. So something that is important to know about the Climate Crisis Response Committee is that it's a board community oversight committee. So there's not, it's not like a decision-making body, and it's not able to direct staff work. But what the committee does serve as is to get regular updates, at least quarterly updates from a staff liaison, that's me, about how PPS is making progress towards our policy goals, and to report back to the board on how, how the committee feels that progress is being made, or is PPS responding with the urgency that the crisis demands? What are some successes? Where are there barriers? And a big role that the committee has played in the past was being able to learn about some challenging and complex scopes that the district is trying to tackle. And there's so many different factors involved, and being able to weigh in from the perspective of this is what the community is seeing as a priority within this policy context, and providing that feedback to the board. And we've seen some real change happen as a result of committee feedback. So it's very cool. And it's also very helpful for me as the person who's keeping track of all these different scopes and advocating to do some systems change to see these scopes move forward within the policy context, to have the perspective of the committee members of like, what are the priorities that you all are seeing, especially with your different expertise and lived experiences. This was a fairly competitive application. We got over 70 applicants, and it's amazing to see that kind of interest in public service of any kind right now, and to have just like this wealth of expertise and experience in this room, as well as in our larger community of people just excited to engage. I just want to lean into that like fact with this committee, and empower you all to be, serve whatever role you would like to in the community, being able to share with what you hear from here, invite people to listen in, all that good stuff. But just know I take the context and the information that is shared really critically, and want to practice transparency with you all when we're talking about the complexities PPS is facing. So with that introduction of the, the committee, I want to share that some successes reported from the committee last year were the student report. Shout out to Alma and our previous student rep, Tess, who created a climate awareness survey and got it out to students and created kind of a new thought and opportunity to think about like, how do we collect student voice and perspectives in a really broad way to be able to provide like a real gauge and temperature check of like how are students feeling in this moment about this work. So that was very cool. And opportunity for that to happen again this year with more support because that was very exciting. Last year, there's also the committee focused on a continued support for electrification of schools, like I mentioned with the bond that was passed in the spring, that and the modernized schools that are coming up. Pretty ambitious modernization goals for the next couple years. And with our decarbonization roadmap that was finalized last year, prioritization tool is what it's called here. It showed that if those 3 high schools are able to be fully electric and completed by 2030, we actually like can meet our 2030 goal, which is wild. Because we definitely were really excited to have that goal, be as ambitious as it was of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions by half by 2030. But I think the concern of like, how are we going to get there? It was hard. And so just to see that as like a reality that can happen if all of these things work out the way accordingly, it's very exciting. And other successes the committee reported on were increased transparent. Oh my gosh, I should be letting you guys share this. I'm so sorry. Alyssa, Jane, Barbie, do any of you want to share these goals? I'm just going for it. Okay, cool. I'm just going to keep talking then, and then you guys can provide more context if people have questions. The deliverable wins that the committee reported on from last year from what the staff had produced over the year was like the climate policy public dashboard, which I said was really great and is gonna be great again when we get when we get it published in this new format. A digital showcase of student projects, which is actually an interactive map that shows all the different projects that happened at schools last year, and we're going to be updating this year as well. We had a really comprehensive community-centered climate action design team that is took place in spring 2024 that has actually just the report got published last year and has really informed the work that we've been doing moving forward. And then, as I alluded to earlier, this decarbonization prioritization tool, which actually creates a prioritization matrix and mechanism for how to approach maintenance, projects, what have you, that affect our greenhouse gas emissions goals across all of our schools and take into consideration environmental health and wellness. There's a health equity score. There's a impact on emissions score. There's like a variety of different levers that are data that this prioritization tool takes into consideration when thinking about how to prioritize what projects at which schools. So for the portfolio of schools that we have, that was an incredibly helpful tool to have produced. And I can share the specific meeting that we had last year where the team that created it gave a really great presentation about what it is. And I can share that if anyone's interested to kind of go back and like watch that because I think it was a great discussion and a really comprehensive overview of what that tool will be doing for the district over, years to come. So, oh, and then here's the survey findings from the student survey that happened. It's pretty great, and you guys have access to these slides, so I will let oh, and then the recommendations for this coming year. So the committee always has a report of like how it went well, and then recommendations moving forward, which include these, just continuing to find alignment, transparency, and scaling our programs in a way that is sustainable. And then especially, institutionalizing student voice, which all of these are within the context of kind of a very changing work environment at PPS as we continue to shift with what work looks like given different staffing and budget constraints. So I'll be able to share kind of those aspects. And then also expanding our PPS volunteer program. All right. I will hold off on this part until we get to that. So anyone have questions about the role of the committee? Yeah, Jane, go ahead.
I don't really have a question, but I thought maybe I'd add a little bit of color commentary from the committee's perspective on some of the things that you. Thank you for sharing a summary of our report from last year and our recommendations from last year. I don't think that we can, like Kat saying it more delicately than I would. Like, we're all PPS parents or students, and we know how massively impacted the budget has been. And so I think we are really trying to find that line between the balance between like holding the line and holding PPS accountable to the commitments in this policy, which are super important, and like practically understanding the constraints that the school district has with budget. And so we felt that one of the like biggest priorities is this school electrification. The district does have money through the bond measures, and the high school modernizations are happening and continuing to happen. And as Kat mentioned, that's our biggest win in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now, that doesn't speak to the other two pillars, but that's a huge piece that we did successfully advocate to the school board last year to just remind them how important maintaining electrification is, because that has come up from consultants. Like, here's a way that we potentially could reduce costs, but we made a case for capital versus operating costs, and ultimately people agreed that that was the best way forward for multiple reasons. And then the other thing I was going to add was like a big piece of our role, this is just my perspective now, is the transparency and accountability piece for this policy. And that's, I think, one of the strengths of our policy is having this committee written into the policy. And the dashboard that staff created to help report out on progress was fantastic. And I'm disappointed to hear that you have to redo some of that. But I look forward to, I'm glad that it's still in play, and I look forward to that being redone in a different software perspective. And then, yeah, just to say, like, I think the channels to the school board and school board meetings can be really important and really impactful. So folks that have an appetite for providing public testimony is fantastic. The student reports have been a real strength in also helping build the case. In my experience with the school board, the student voice gets extra weight, and it's a really impactful way to just keep in touch with what the people that we're serving think about all this. So thank you. Just wanted to share my perspective from how things went last year.
Thank you, Jane. So appreciated. Barbie, I'm hoping we can hear you, but would love to hear your perspective.
Hear me. And I'm happy to switch my microphone to perhaps that will help. Same as system. I want to elevate Jane. I think to not recognize the vehicle that you have here, you have a voice, and you have a responsibility to elevate students' voices. And you have an opportunity to change. And that's huge. And I think that you have an amazing support in terms of Kat because she sees the vision. So what is that element that you want to move forward? And it's really up to you whether you want to move it forward or not. You see the framework, the objectives and the goals. I would say treat it in terms of targeted universalism. You have an outcome, work backwards. What are your strategies, actions, and tactics that'll get you to tracking those performance measures? You already have the framework, everything is there. I am just because we really, Kat, you started this vision, this implementation started during the pandemic. And it was incredibly tough. And we moved through a lot of really difficult budgetary issues. And I don't think that that should be left on anyone. And we fought a good fight in many cases. And I think we held our ground. And also, again, elevating what Jane said, being mindful of the real constraints, the real issues, and understanding who we're supporting, whose agenda that we are able to bring voice to. Everything is about whether you want to take this or not. This vision is there. The policy is in place. I would recommend going back and looking at the last presentation in the spring. I think that is a great video to watch because we were slated for a very few number of minutes, I think, and I was prepared to get on and off. And it turned into what, an hour and 15?
Barbie, I think we lost you again.
You have the leader. You can do this. Don't limit yourself by someone else's inability to see the imagination. If it fits within the policy, if it's a funding source, if you can find the people, you can do it. That's what this is all about. This is all about bringing community to public agents. It's that bridge. If you're willing to serve, do you have the skills? Can you look for grants? That are left after a very significant cutback in positions in the spring left the existing staff overwhelmed and facing a daunting task, which is doing what they do best, educating our children. Being protectors and gatekeepers of our future. So and this is the vehicle for that. So I'm just super excited here again. Kat, I'm so sorry, but I think it was good. I think there was some energy here. What you have started, what you have laid the groundwork for, bringing this policy in, the framework, it's there. You can present anything. You can bring ideas. Folks will listen. I know the people on the school board. They're good people and they want to make change, but you got to find out the whys and the whats, right? Bring the partners together, find the funding, build the framework, write the curricula. We have a commitment to integrate environmental science curricula K through 12. We heard that last spring. I know I have the partners I know there is funding in the community. I know there is an appetite, but there is a need to do the work. Who's ready to do the work? And that's building a K through 12 curricula that is wise all the way through, that is centered in environmental and sustainable conservation. So, all right, Kat, I'm sorry. You know, I love it, love this group. Alma, you are killing it. I'm sorry. And the students, what you're bringing, like, I'm so excited for the students. So, and Leah, and this is our job to make sure that we create a vehicle for you, that we lift your voices up, that we prepare you, that we give you confidence, that we prepare you, we ask the right questions so that you have the right answers. That when you are doing the things and you have the questions, ask the questions, get the data, put it on the dashboard. That's how you move the work. So sorry to data nerd out on you. But yes, most definitely you have an amazing group of individuals, and I'm just really appreciative to continue to be here, and I'm so sorry for the internet.
Thank you, Barbie. I'm just impressed that you still could give like a really wonderful pep talk, even with like a spotty internet connection. It's pretty impressive. So I think we all got that encouragement. So thank you. Yeah, any other questions or comments about the role of the committee before we move on to the meeting dates for this year?
I might just like jump in really quickly to like, and maybe other folks can provide some reflection back, folks that have been on the committee before, but I kind of think of our role is like the first piece is that oversight to the board, which feels very critical. And the whole reason for having the committee was like a big part of that. And then we've got this opportunity, kind of like Barbie is like embodying this like ability to be a thought partner and like a cheerleader for all the work that's happening at the district level, which is like at this point, spearheaded by Kat. I think was it last year that the district lost about a third of the staff. That was like what we're looking at as far as like budget cuts go. So really like thinking about just the capacity that folks have and all the great work that is still happening. And then I think as a third part is being these like liaisons for this work and thinking about how we can encourage folks to learn more about the policy, to understand how amazing it is that our district has been one of the like leaders around the country in having this climate crisis response committee that has like such teeth and like, embodies not only greenhouse gas emission goals that are really aggressive, but also environmental justice and climate literacy, which is really phenomenal and amazing. And I would be really excited this year to think about how we can continue to like spread the word, because most folks I talk to don't know about it, which is a bummer. Yeah. Murtaza, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just curious. And, when the analysis and the thought was put into promoting electrification as one of the main pillars, which is very commendable, was there also a discussion about the impacts of that initiative on global South communities with, the resource extraction that happens there to fuel those electrification initiatives?
That's a great question and perspective. I know the primary goal behind the electrification was thinking around how the utility providers are moving towards renewable resources and getting off of carbon, especially PGE, and the state of Oregon goals. Since I wasn't here during the discussion I started after the policy was passed, I'd be curious to hear too about like what the thought considerations were, especially thinking about the components that make up like, yes, the like energy source might be renewable, but then the components that make up the materials that produce the renewable energy, which is what you're referring to as being often like unethically mined and extracted. So I'd be really curious to hear about that discussion as well, in something where we've, from that kind of justice perspective, really thinking about conservation as like a first step, not just let's replace everything we're currently doing with all these new things, but like how can we use the least amount of that material? Yeah, it's a great question. Shannon, did you have a thought on that?
Yes, just to say, to piggyback a bit. Of course, looking into, like was said, the impact of the new choices, but I'd like to assume that have we also looked at just reducing certain needs with low technology means that have been used in other places successfully for generations that we are not as accustomed to here in America? If this is things like that have been brought to the table at all.
I think, and I just want to say that both of those perspectives, I think, are one of the most important things we need to be looking at when we're building something that our students can look to as a future worth fighting for, and what the future can look like that's more sustainable and centered on justice, is instead of looking at like technological solutions, that like simplification and really thoughtful design considerations. Um, so is that being thought of at our like in our operations side of things right now? I'm not sure. I would have to go and talk to our Office of School Modernization and our facilities and asset management to kind of be curious about how those design considerations are being thought of. I'm thinking when you say that, Shannon, I'm thinking really about like AC and like air conditioning, and how are we able to like cool spaces creatively when we know that it'll take, even if we had all the money in the world, there's not enough contractors in Portland to flip all of the schools that need AC in 1 year. There's just like, that's a complex issue. So like, how can we have some like interim solutions? Yeah. Just as
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Shannon. Sorry.
Even the ways that can be created or are being used in other countries, so you don't even need as much. You don't need as much AC. It's built into the infrastructure. I don't need to get into too much now, but there's things that are just more low cost that may be workable in our current situations that reduce our need for AC to begin with.
Absolutely. Those I and reducer, so that goes into what Murtaza was saying around like that draw of electricity. Like if we're not reducing, for instance, our electricity load, we're just relying on it to be like these like technologies that are still extracting from other places. Like, is it holistically that helpful? And it is reminding me that I got to go to one of our architecture and designers that was presenting different ideas for Jefferson a couple years ago, had been talking about things like passive heating and cooling, schools that are able to be when we're talking about like electric grid failure, schools that can be operational still for like through that for up to a certain period of time, potentially like 30 days or months or whatever. So thanks for saying all of those things, both of you, because it kind of sparked that conversation back in my head. Those designs tend to be a little atypical for school designs, and might result in more upfront costs for designing them. And so that's something that I think, I'm not sure how those designs would be incorporated currently into like the designs for instance, Jefferson, or as they're starting with Cleveland, that process and things like that. But I do think that those kinds of recommendations are things that I'm sure our design teams would be interested to know that the community would like to see. So I'm getting into sticky territory where I'm not entirely sure that process, and I'm sure they would also love for me to be careful about how I'm talking about the modernized buildings. But I'm just throwing out there that I have seen different designers in Portland create those types of options when thinking about how we could design spaces. So yeah.
I know Lay has her hand up, but I have just one really thing to piggyback on when you're talking about the Cleveland modernization. One thing that I know that they talked about a lot was they decided to take down the front facade that they were thinking about keeping. Because they decided it was more of a priority to face the school in a different direction, so that the way the windows were and the way like the cardinal directions were, it would be easier to keep the school cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And I just thought that was a really cool thing.
Thank you for sharing. I am going to put this on my list of things to bring in a staff person to talk more eloquently about than me just like musing. Yeah, Leah, what were you?
Hi. So I have my hand in so many different climate pots, and as I'm trying to absorb all of your slides and everything that everybody's saying, I would say that one of my biggest concerns is heat exposure with the kids, and I hopefully will have a paper being published in the Journal of Climate Change and Health where I'm really focused on recurrent heat exposure and renal failure, kidney failure, and I do think that my concern is that exposure with our children leading to chronic kidney disease later in life. That's sort of atypical chronic kidney disease that we don't know what it's from, but it's from recurrent heat. And so when I think about the buildings, I'm always thinking about safety and the capacity to protect the kids and the staff that are inside those buildings. The conversations around electrification are important. Murtaza, I'm so glad you brought up the extraction and the impacts on people in the global south, particularly women and children in the global south. I think that's probably why I asked the question earlier about nuclear, just because that's the Illinois and Michigan answer to not be extracting from other places. But I obviously have no idea where our electricity is going to come from, but I think we're all curious about that. And that's probably a discussion for another time. But the last thing I want to mention is more of a vibe, taking all of the data and creating a vibe. So I had the great honor to be able to speak at the World Health Summit in Berlin. And I was on a panel with a man named Neil Bernard. He's a pastor in Louisiana, and he has turned his church into what he calls a community lighthouse. And he has outfitted it with renewable energy so that anytime there's a hurricane and all of the electricity goes out, his church is a place where people can come and gather and shelter and cook and have electricity. And I sort of think of Portland Public Schools in some ways like community lighthouses, especially since I was a frontline COVID doc. And it was like us at OHSU on the COVID units and PPS kind of holding everybody together. And so maybe in some ways, our job in this committee is to build the community lighthouses. And that's what we're doing. And that's kind of our vibe and our mission. And we take all of this data and all of our expertise, and we come together to build these lighthouses and seas of uncertainty for our community.
That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I want to point out that Jane shared the electric grid mix for Oregon, which I will put in our meeting notes so that folks can access that are watching this call, as well as any of us who want to reference it again later. All right, we've got 10 minutes left. I feel like it's been a really great discussion so far, and I'm really excited I've been taking notes on like what main topics are coming up that are of interest to folks. And definitely keep those coming. After this meeting as well, you can email me directly and say, oh, I thought of this. I want to make sure we include this on an agenda in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and share our committee quarterly meeting timeline, if that sounds good, Alyssa. So The Climate Crisis Response Committee is required to meet at least quarterly, which in the scheme of a school year, that's how I've interpreted it. So this meeting, we're considering a special meeting. It's the orientation. It's really getting oriented. And then the first quarterly meeting to be, these are all proposed dates. So I would just love if folks can take a look at these and let me know if any of them just starkly don't work for you. We would love to get as much attendance at these meetings as possible, at least for the quarterly ones, just to make sure everyone can be on the same page and included, and really focus on that sense of like community and transparency and keeping everyone up to date. These are currently scheduled from Wednesdays, which for folks that were on the committee last year is different. Those were on Thursdays, just given the feedback I heard from folks when I asked what days worked better. You don't have to let me know right now if these dates work. I just ask that if you can, I will go ahead and unless I guess I'm going to give folks a moment to say I object out of just if you see something you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely not going to work, let me know and I'll make a note to schedule reshuffle some things. Okay. I haven't heard any stark objections yet. So, not generally, they should always be from 5:30 to 7. That seems to be a time that works for most folks. The feedback I also got given childcare and commuting and all sorts of things was that virtual would really work best for this committee. We love it in person when we can, but we totally understand that like virtual can just be really accessible for folks. So, maybe we can schedule something later out as like, a special event or something to see people in person because that's always nice. But I just wanted to let folks know that that was what I had heard as being really like preferred, and I want to respect that. But also invite folks to make sure that in a virtual space, we try to make it as inclusive and engaging as possible. So really planting that seed for next time. And then the second column that you see, special meetings. There are times where it just makes sense to have like a meeting pop up. And I love to have something on the calendar because it's kind of hard to schedule last minute. And in the past, that has been things around like if the committee, we know that around April, the committee will probably want to write some kind of letter or feedback to the board around like budget proposals, or we know that also around a similar time, the committee might be really excited to do like a working meeting to focus on like the annual report, which I'm still getting scheduled. Basically, putting some stuff on the calendar as calendar holds. I don't want those to scare people off from participating in the quarterly meetings, like, oh, this is too much. But for public meeting laws, if half of the committee members meet, it's considered a quorum and it has to be publicly noticed. And so I want to make sure we have calendar holds so that people aren't meeting for fun little work meetings and breaking public meeting laws. So just wanted to throw that out there that that's something I'd like to propose for this year is to have a couple calendar holds on in between months in case there's a big topic that comes up, because we know things just happen sometimes these days and you want to talk about it with your people. So just to, throw a meeting on like February and April, for instance, as like some interim meeting opportunities. And another opportunity to use that is to potentially focus it more as like a town hall style, where maybe there's not something the committee wants to discuss, but thinks like, oh, the community would really like to hear about this topic. So can you organize something where we can like tell everybody to come and they get to see this, virtual town hall about this topic? I wanted to offer to do that as well. So this can all be those specific topics can be further discussed at the first quarterly meeting on the 19th. But I wanted to plant that seed so that you all can be kind of thinking about that. I also might have already gotten that date wrong, the 19th. Is that a Wednesday? Anyways, yeah. So any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, inspirations, ideas about the quarterly meeting, proposed dates, town hall / working meetings? Go ahead, Shannon. Yeah.
I wanted to have a question before we left, which isn't directly related to that, so I can wait till the end. Sorry.
No worries. Yes, Jane, I thank you. So Jane put in the chat. Um, Thank you for folks that said that the dates look good. Jane put in the chat about shifting the timing for the annual report. The last few years, the annual report for the Climate Crisis Response Committee has ended up being the very last board meeting of the year. So I've put in, we're getting everything scheduled this year. So I've asked our board manager if we could have that annual report be more in, end of April, early May time period so that the students are still in school and can participate. I want to give a shout out to Alma, who presented last year on her birthday in June after school had already ended. But it wasn't an accessible time for our other student representative because school was already out. So we want to make sure that our students can actively participate. So I will keep you all posted what we hear about that timing for that report. But thanks for reminding us. Alyssa, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to, I guess last year we suffered from a bit of attrition as the year went on, and I'm wondering, I'm wondering if we have a rule around how many folks need to be there in order for us to actually have a quarterly meeting, and also if we want to have a process where if a certain number of folks turns out decline the invite or can't make it when push comes to shove, if we have a plan for rescheduling or if we just carry on. I don't know if that's a question for you, Kat, or if it's a question for the broader group, I guess.
Like a committee question for your
Yeah.
first committee discussion amongst yourselves, how you would like to handle that scenario.
That's a good question. I guess I can go either way. Uh, Either a policy, like an absence policy, or we just reschedule based on people's schedule with enough times. If it's going to be virtual, then it's a lot easier to do the latter, I think. But yeah, I'm not alone on this, so we should talk about it as a group.
And I've served on some Oregon Health Authority committees. What they do is they don't ever reschedule, but if they don't have a quorum, they'll discuss and then bring the topics to the next meeting for everybody to vote on. But if you miss more than 2 meetings, you get kicked off the committee. And so you have to let people, you have to let the people know why you're missing type of a deal. So I don't know if that is something that could work for people, is you just keep a standard meeting time. I know that I don't want to make assumptions about Murtaza, but I have a Cuckoo Bananas call schedule that I like wrap around other things and well in advance. So it's very hard for me to spontaneously recommit to other times.
Yeah, that's fair. I can understand that. And I appreciate that perspective from the other committees that you're on. Um, best practices a week notice for
public notices. Oh, no. So to have a meeting, it needs to be publicly noticed. And I would say to cancel a meeting, given the publicly noticed aspect of a meeting, it would be great to know that it needs to be rescheduled or canceled before that public notice gets published so that the public isn't because they won't be as on top of, I'm assuming, of seeing when things are getting rescheduled and stuff. So we try to make sure that if we're going to publicly notice something, that it gets, that it happens so that people aren't just waiting around being like, where's my opportunity to connect with this committee? There's a slightly lower risk impact of that when it's a virtual meeting because people aren't coming to the district office to see something or present. But anyway, so that's what I would say is I can make a commitment as a staff person liaison to share the proposed meeting agenda and materials 2 weeks before the scheduled meeting date. And then folks can, look at double check, look at their calendars, and then if they're like, oh man, something came up, if you can let us know. Ideally, we won't have like 5 people that has that happen, and things also happen. Ice storms happen. Like we're gonna be flexible, right? Like as this is just kind of best practices, but that's something that can be shared in kind of an agreement afterwards of after I send out materials, you can let me know within however many days that uh, if you're not able to make it, and then that gives us some flexibility to reschedule accordingly.
Yeah, Shannon.
With the idea of possible reschedules, I don't know if this is a usual thing for committees like this, but would it be possible, like, if we have to reschedule, we're gonna try to always shoot for a Wednesday, so we at least know that, okay, Wednesday nights are kind of this thing in for like the rest of us that may or may not, that for those that may not need to reschedule, but it's rescheduled, we just know that it's probably going to be on a Wednesday. Am I making sense? Like some sort of semi-predictable pattern, because I completely understand these things come up and people can't make. That's just a natural process for life. But like if we have some sort of like semi-predictable backup.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, Shannon, if maybe that's those interim meetings that you were talking about, Kat, and if for some reason we don't have quorum at one of our quarterly meetings that are scheduled, we have these other holds on our calendars that maybe instead of it being more of like a town hall or deep dive, it turns into the quarterly meeting, if we don't have enough folks who are able to make it. Recognizing that like there's going to be folks that are missing sometimes because life happens, like we said, but and I think having the notice up front too, if everybody has these dates on their calendars, and that if we have as much notice as we can, if people are going to be out, then we'll just have enough leeway. But yeah, I think that the plan is to always have them on Wednesday, since it seemed like after surveying the group, that was the least inconvenient day.
Yeah, and then also it keeps in mind that in case you all are aware, regular board meetings are on Tuesdays every other week. And Carrie and I have all sorts of exciting things with our student climate advisors and teachers on Mondays, on Monday evenings. So for us, really, it's like either Wednesdays or Thursdays are the best. And so I think this year, just keeping it on Wednesdays, so it's somewhat predictable for folks, and that helps with, scheduling around childcare or dinner or whatever you need to do. Yeah, I'll make notes of all of this. I wanted to make some space for Murtaza or Jane or Leah A. We haven't heard as much from you all about this scheduling discussion, and want to make sure that you're just engaged and have if you have any challenges or input you want to share.
Yeah, I agree with Shannon. I feel like if we do need to reschedule, having it be on a Wednesday during this time would work best for me as well.
Yeah, the schedule's looking good on my end. Yes, life happens sometimes, but hopefully I should be able to make most of them.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Well, I'm mindful of time, and I know that was the last thing on our list. So, had any final thoughts that you want to share with us?
I guess I'll just share that I'm really excited that this committee is up and running for this year. It's a great group. I feel incredibly grateful that I'm a staff person who, like, I tell folks like, oh yeah, I'm going to a board committee tonight. And they're like, oh geez, a board committee, not because of PBS boards, just because of board and general committees, right? It's exciting, but anyways, I need to stop talking, but I get to have like one of the coolest, most engaged and passionate committees, I think. So I just think it's very cool. And I'm grateful to get to have all of you. I've written good notes. My follow-up action items for you all will be to share those calendar invites with you so that you have them held on your calendars so it's easier to keep in mind. And then I will work with Alyssa to make sure that we can get you a meeting agenda and materials 2 weeks prior to the meeting so that you have like a full week with the materials and agenda before the public meeting notice goes out to just give us some more wiggle room and give people the opportunity to share about if they see anything that needs to change on the agenda or if they want to add stuff. If you have friends that might want to provide public comments, it's always available. Stuff like that. And yeah, I think those are my action items. My only action items for you all is that if you haven't already, please share just a photo and any kind of little blurb you might want to share about your interests or your relationship to this work or whatever you want to share, so that when I get the website all updated and relinked to everything, that we can have all of you in there. So that's all from me.
Thank you. I have a question. I don't know who it goes to, but regarding the student survey that students put together, I would love a copy of that if possible. I do teach, but not in the PPS system. I'm with Multnomah Education Service District, and I would love to use that in my classroom if possible.
Absolutely. I can get in touch with you about that. And then I also, over the summer, kind of went through the responses a little bit more in depth because we had some short answer responses in addition to graphs, and put together some kind of summary points and recommendations. So I can share all of that with you.
I would love that. I would appreciate it greatly. I'll put my school email in the chat. Thank you kindly.
Yeah, America.
Yeah, so you were talking about this dashboard, and I was wondering if you could get pictures of it just to see what it looks like. Or maybe there's a link.
For
I did.
what we're currently working on.
Yeah, you said that it was a really cool dashboard, and you're moving it from you're taking it off in Visio. So I don't see how, and I think it was mentioned that there are pictures of it. So if there's like just a snippet of it, I'd like to see what it has looked like, and I know that's going to change in the future.
Yeah, I can share that afterwards if that sounds good. And kind of the meeting notes. I'll share some. I just had like a screenshot of what the first page of it looked like, but
Yeah, that's fine.
it'll be different, but it's just kind of fun to see what we did in the past too.
Yeah. That's what I would like to see.
Awesome. Well, I'm also will echo Kat's enthusiasm and excitement about this group, and I do want to set a good example, being mindful of everyone's time and commitment. So thank you so much for coming and joining us and for putting those future dates on your calendar, and feel free to email with any questions or thoughts later on. Have a good night. Bye. Thanks, Kat. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Night.